Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. A couple of videos back I talked about all the different types of fat that you can find in your food. Click here to go watch that one if you missed it. But in that video I mentioned omega-3s and 6s but didn't really go into much detail about them. And that's because they are a big topic and they need their own video, so here it is. Now, omega-3 and 6 fats are the main reason that I wouldn't advise anyone from dropping fat entirely from their diet. Now, there are good and bad parts to all of the nutrients that you find in food, and so I don't like removing a food group or nutrient completely. And this video is a good example of why. Now, most of you have probably already heard of omega-3s and omega-6s. Most dietary guidelines will sprinkle in something like, make sure you're getting plenty of healthy fats such as omega-3s and 6s, and they'll kind of just move on without explaining much further. And many people will look to fish oil supplements in an effort to get in enough omega-3 in their diets, but I think information on this topic is a bit scattered and doesn't give the whole picture. So I'm here to just tell you what you need to know so that you can once again make the best decisions for yourself. So let's just get into it. Now, the first thing we all need to know is what exactly are these magical omega-3s and 6s? Well, they are fatty acids, and when I talked about all the different types of fats in food, I said that when you eat food, the fat can either be saturated, unsaturated, or trans fat. Well, omega-3s and 6s are unsaturated, and to take things one step further, they are polyunsaturated, which means that they have more than one double bond in their structure, like so. Now, apologies for the quick chemistry lesson that we are about to go on, but do stay with me. This double bond, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but where this double bond is found in the overall structure is how these two get their names. So, omega-3 has its first double bond on the third carbon, and omega-6 has its first double bond on the sixth carbon. And the omega comes from the fact that when you look at these structures, the end with this little group here that is circled is called the omega end, and that's where we start the counting from. Now, both omega-3 and 6s are known as essential fats, which means that your body cannot produce them on its own, so they must come from your diet, and they need to come from your diet because they both play very important roles in your body, which I'm about to explain. So let's start with omega-3s. There are three main types of omega-3 fatty acids that you will run into, and they are ALA, EPA, and DHA. Now, those are abbreviations for longer chemical names, which I have included if you're curious, but I'm just going to use the abbreviations because that's all you need to know for now. Now, EPA is most well known for its anti-inflammatory effects and heart benefits. It's anti-inflammatory because it results in less prostaglandins being made in your body. Now, prostaglandins are inflammatory compounds. If you are experiencing pain due to inflammation, it's likely that these guys are involved, and fatty acids are actually needed in order to make them. But if EPA happens to be the fatty acid that's being used to make them, you actually get less of these being made, which means you get less inflammation. Now, in terms of heart health, there are a lot of benefits. EPA can help reduce triglyceride levels and also help improve the function of your blood vessels. Now, it does this because it can make them more flexible and less prone to constricting, which is good because this means your risk of getting high blood pressure can reduce. I mentioned just before that it is anti-inflammatory, and these effects will also protect the heart from inflammation, which can help protect your heart against heart disease. Now, another thing that EPA can do is actually reduce the risk of blood clot formation, and this is good because clots are actually common causes of heart attacks and strokes. And if you remember all the way back to the videos I did on cholesterol, I mentioned that if there's too much cholesterol in your arteries, you will get buildups of fatty plaques which can burst and lead to clots. Well, EPA can slow down the buildup of these plaques. Now, I did just stick to the main health benefits, but EPA is also good for overall mood and also brain health, but DHA is actually the main player there. Now, it's also good for eye health and can reduce the risk of age-related macular degeneration, which is a very common cause of vision loss in older adults. Now, let's just move on to the other main omega-3, and that is DHA. This is also good for your heart and has anti-inflammatory effects. In fact, lots of the health benefits will overlap, but I want to just focus on what DHA does for brain health. Now, DHA is actually needed to make the membranes of your nerve cells, and these membranes, apart from holding the cell together, are actually very important for sending messages between all the nerve cells in your body. DHA also protects nerve cells from damage, and that means that it can reduce the risk of neurodegenerative diseases, which is why a lot of people will say that omega-3s are important for your cognitive function and to prevent cognitive decline. So as you age, if you want things like memory, problem solving, and holding attention to remain strong, then DHA is something that you should start taking because it has been shown to help in this area. Now, if you want to know where to find omega-3 fatty acids, then fatty fish are your friends. Both EPA and DHA are found in fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and anchovies. Now, because most people don't like to continuously consume fatty fish, there are plenty of fish oil supplements that are concentrated sources of omega-3, which make it a lot easier to get in your diet. Grass-fed meats also tend to have more omega-3 content when compared to regular meats, and you can also find DHA in seaweed. Now, there are plenty of plant-based sources as well, but they contain ALA, which is the third omega-3 fatty acid that I didn't go into too much detail on. And that's because while yes, it has health benefits, it's not quite as effective in the body as the other two. But for those of you who do need plant-based sources of omega-3, you can find it in chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, soy products, and again, seaweed is great. So let's move on to omega-6s. The health benefits are actually very similar here. Omega-6s are great for your heart, but instead of reducing triglycerides, they help to reduce LDL cholesterol, which we now know as the bad cholesterol. So we want to keep those levels down. And just like omega-3s, your omega-6s are needed for brain function and to help prevent cognitive decline. They are also anti-inflammatory. So you can see that you need both of them, both omega-3 and omega-6, to get the best benefits. Now, in terms of where to find omega-6s, they are actually found in a variety of foods and oils. Here is a list of some foods to look at, but as you can see, we have vegetable oils, nuts and seeds, chicken and turkey can be a decent source, and so are whole grains as well as some dairy products, especially if the animals were fed diets that had omega-6 containing grains. Now, if you recall, with omega-3s we did have a few different types, but the main omega-6 fatty acid that you will see is called linoleic acid, so just look for that on labeling. Now, the big question, and the most important one for anyone trying to get enough omega-3 and 6 in their diet, is how much is needed? And when it comes to omega-3s and 6s, that question is not a simple one to answer. There isn't a set amount that you need to include. In fact, the most important thing is actually the ratio of the two. So what does that mean? It means that the amount of omega-6s that you consume in your diet cannot be a huge amount more than your omega-3 content. And while there isn't a single agreed on ratio, the research seems to all point to somewhere between a ratio of 1:1, meaning you have the same amount of each in your diet, to 4:1. In other words, for every gram of omega-3 that you have, you might need up to 4 grams of omega-6. That sounds simple enough, but the typical Western diet often completely overshoots this. It's estimated that in the West, we have a ratio of omega-3 to 6 that ranges from 10:1 all the way to 25:1, which means we are having way more omega-6 than we need, and this is likely due to the fact that vegetable oils are used in a lot of the foods that we consume, especially in fast food, and we just aren't having enough fatty fish or other sources of omega-3s to match it. And this is bad because it means even if we increase the amount of omega-3s, we won't be able to get the most benefits unless we get this ratio back into check and reduce the amount of omega-6s that we consume. And the even worse news is that this high ratio that the Western diet seems to have is actually having negative effects on our health. It's been found to be associated with chronic inflammation, which can lead to a number of health conditions like heart disease and even some cancers. Now, I do think that this association actually is more so to do with the fact that processed and fried foods seem to have omega-6, so the culprit is likely the processed food and the fast food. Either way, getting this ratio back in line will not only give all those benefits, but also reduce the risk that comes from having too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3. Now, ideally, you want 12 to 15 grams of linoleic acid per day. That's your omega-6. And if you follow the ratio of 4:1, you want about a quarter of that amount in omega-3, so about 4 grams. Now, a good way to increase omega-3s is to opt for supplements. Many people look to fish oil capsules for this, but there are a few rules to follow when picking the right supplement. Some things to keep in mind are to check where the omega-3 is coming from. They can be from fish oil, krill oil, or algal oil, which is plant-based for vegetarians and vegans. And make sure that the label actually specifies and breaks down the amounts of EPA and DHA, which are the two main types of omega-3s. You want a supplement that has a balanced amount of the two because they both have benefits for health that you will want. And finally, make sure that fish oil supplementation is something that you actually need. Check with your doctor first, especially if you are someone that already has existing health conditions. But that's all I have to say for now on omega-3s and 6s. Hopefully that has helped clear the air around them and given you some direction in how to make sure that you're getting the right amount in your diet and how to make sure that you have the right balance of omega-6s to omega-3s. They have great health benefits, and omega-3s especially are important for lots of preventative health effects in terms of heart and brain health. So if you want to play the long game, get some omega-3s in your diet and start as early as you can so that you have plenty of time to let them do their work. Now, if you've learned something or just enjoyed the video, please don't forget to give a like and subscribe. I'll see you next week, and until then, keep playing the long game.